Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got highlights here. You're going to need to see them. SEC versus Ripple. I thought we weren't going to a jury trial, but there's a window that may take us to a jury trial. We got that. Oh, and we got something else too. World Gold Council, they're moving to tokenized gold. Just thought you should know. We got that and so much more. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook for exclusive content. Brace yourself, ladies and gentlemen. We got something new that we're going to be doing, and I couldn't be more excited about it. It's kind of a next level for me for the channel here, and I'm very, very excited about it. Came up with a whole new set of new ideas, me and Mrs. Backup and my mastermind group, and I'm excited to share them with you very soon. $960 billion cryptocurrency market cap, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Sunday morning. 19,100 plus, Ethereum 1,300. XRP is 45 cents, and we're off by just over 5% on the 7-day. How about that for progress? U.S. Treasury, U.S. September budget deficit, $430 billion versus September 2021 of last year, $65 billion. Houston, we have a problem, right? Listen, this is why I share things that are other things that I'm doing at the time, to try to figure. I need to be spread out a little bit in my investments. So, there's a lot of uncertainty out here, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, it's time for my sponsor. And you know what? And I love working with them. Masterworks is great. Look, you guys know I love art. And if you don't, you can still look at it. Just look at the numbers. Compare it next to S&P 500, the housing market, corporate bond market, the gold, whatever you want to. And look at the similar works and the returns crushing the daylights out of the S&P. And there's a lot of uncertainty whether it's crypto right now or not. So there's a part of my portfolio that's in this, and I feel good about it. You guys can check it out for yourself with the link underneath the video. FTX funded PAC's planned flurry of ads in lead up to midterms. That's not the only thing. Remember, we had BitBoy really upset, very charged up, and somebody's done a wonderful music flip of his rant, which is pretty remarkable in a celebratory way. FTX will delist crypto assets in the U.S. that it deems might be securities, according to CEO Sam Bankman-Fried. How do they know? I think Flyeti down here has got it straight. So SBF and FTX are picking winners and losers. Sounds familiar. Look, there's a lot of uncertainty for sure in the markets. There's a lot of uncertainty in who's the good guys and who's the bad guys exactly here. And I'd like to know more. I did go into this article. I could save you the time of reading it. And it just basically says their legal team is in fact going to make that determination. And why is all of this happening? Right? Whether it's the SEC suing Ripple or whether it's, someone else getting a lawsuit or a delisting, right? Or we see now FTX coming out and trying to do exactly what we saw in the early days Coinbase say they were doing. But look, it's not just because you and I are out here trading this stuff in a speculative way. And by the way, I do use crypto and XRP as a use case as well. But I believe all of this is really less about, the immediate is that we're out here trading, buying, selling, and holding this stuff. But, the longer term is that the world's going to be digitized and then tokenized. And the World Council knows it too, and they're moving to tokenized gold. And it is no joke, ladies and gentlemen. This article is legit right here. Former central banker and CEO of World Gold Council, David Tate, thinks it's time to take steps to modernize the gold market. He goes on to say in here, the digitization project of WGC is called Gold 247, which means short for gold 24 hours, 7 days a week, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, they plan on accomplishing this by digitizing gold as well as market infrastructure. They go on to say here that, in fact, it is done on blockchain here. They talk about this in this part of it here. Component 24/7, almost gold every bar in the world. It says here, Tate wants to create a digital token backed by physical gold to serve as a tool to trade gold more easily. The idea is that digitization will improve transparency and accessibility, which we all know it will, right? Goes on down here to talk about the fact that it does, which already the 24/7 began a quality control and integrity program led by London Bullion Market Association, which already uses blockchain technology to manage supplies. And this is getting real, ladies and gentlemen. You know, and what a time for it to be tokenizing gold. And every bar of gold in the world, to keep track of every bar of gold in the world. Damn, you'd almost think we're going back on a gold standard again. I'm speculating. It's probably nothing. So's this guy, gold guru and massive investor, sits down with Daniela Cambone here from Stansberry Research, and I want you to hear this clip.
Biden administration is looking at regulating cryptocurrencies, and it looks like it's happening faster than many people thought. I know, speaking with you, you've said they will not want a competing currency, and they'll do everything to stop Bitcoin. I've spoken to other experts on the flip side who will say the U.S. will not want to be last in this race. If Bitcoin is the future, they're not going to want to ban it. They're going to want to be ahead of it. I want to really get your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think you have to separate what the U.S. really wants is to be ahead of the game on blockchain, not Bitcoin particular, or some form of digital system that they can eventually take over. And that's, you know, they're going to create their own central bank digital currency like everybody else in the world. And they're not going to want competition. I see Bitcoin as an anti-sovereign fiat play. And if I'm right about a monetary reset where everybody's going to something else that incorporates digital currencies in that whatever they create, the last thing they're going to want is the competition with Bitcoin. And as I said a year and a half ago during our debate with Michael Saylor, eventually they will want to take Bitcoin out. I think there's too much risk there.
And I want to get back.
So there you have it right there. And I'm reminded in that clip of when Brad Garlinghouse said, or even more than once I've heard him say it, that, you know, governments will roll out their tanks before they let something like crypto or a Bitcoin take over and alleviate them of their power, relevancy, and control. I think that's where we are. And listen, that's why, look, I know it feels far away. And, you know, and I'm not trying to say that it isn't. All I'm pointing at here is, for me, and I'm not trying to sell a used car here. If you don't believe it, you don't believe it, and that's fine. And there's a lot of people that don't. But I do believe that this is the ultimate goal, is to bring XRP into this scenario. And I do believe that we have a great chance of a huge paradigm shift in the monetary system back to a gold standard for the fiat dollars, which can then run and be expressed and move around on the XRP ledger, private or otherwise. That's what I'm here for. And and that brings us to the case. This is Jeremy Hogan right here, and this whole video, as always, is packed with incredible insights about exactly what has gone on in the last couple of weeks. And you need to watch every minute of it. It feels like a crime just to highlight a couple things here. But however, there's always some great humor in there as well, which is always fantastic. But I want to give you just two clips out of this. And we're going to start one here where he talks about the idea if XRP was deemed a security, you could see this thing go to a jury trial. And I know that Mrs. Backup's hearing that in the other room and going, oh my gosh, he said that wouldn't happen. I'm just saying what the legal analysts say. Let's start with this clip here. Shout out to Jeremy.
So yes, the Hinman emails were actually given to Ripple, but what exactly is in them? Well, some parts make it into Ripple's reply brief, so we do have some ideas. Looking at the bottom of page 48 of Ripple's brief, quote, contemporaneous SEC communications suggest that the SEC's own officials were well aware that the speech would lead to redacted and deliberately recommended giving industry participants redacted, presumably to give the agency more room to maneuver, close quote. So at least there we can infer that the first part says SEC officials were well aware that the speech would lead to confusion or something like that in the marketplace, even if we can't infer the second word. But put the guessing game aside for now, and let's see what we know about the secretive emails for sure. First, we know the SEC fought tooth and nail not to produce them, and now they have. But we also know that the emails are under seal, so the public won't probably get to see them until December at the earliest. We also know that the emails are only really relevant to the fair notice defense and not to the issue of whether XRP is a security or not. We know that the SEC wants the judge to rule in its favor on the fair notice defense, and now we also and finally know that Ripple wants a jury trial on its fair notice defense, not the judge to decide it and summary judgment. And how do we know that? Let's look at Ripple's recent brief on page 43. Quote, Roman numeral 3, defendant's fair notice presents genuine disputed issues of material fact for trial. In seeking summary judgment on defendant's affirmative fair notice defense, the SEC ignores overwhelming evidence showing that no reasonable person trying to apply the Howey test would have believed that defendants' offers and sales of XRP, most of which involve no contract at all, were investment contracts and thus securities, close quote. Yes, Ripple is saying, we'll see you in court on the fair notice defense, SEC. We want to run a bunch of SEC employees and prior employees, including Mr. Hinman, up on the stand and cross-examine them in a public forum on the guidance, or lack thereof, provided by the SEC, and we want to ask them on the stand why the SEC Director of Enforcement declared Ethereum a non-security, knowing that it would cause all sorts of confusion in the marketplace and even having been warned about it by other attorneys at the SEC. Why indeed? So, you could say that Garlinghouse's tweet was a declaration of war, and declarations of war, as history tells us, are always made from places of strength.
Now, that is an incredible point to make right there, because you could feel that strength. It was palpable when it came out. When we heard Stewart post on Twitter, you felt it, and then Brad Garlinghouse as well. And I tell you, you know, what I get from what he just said is that basically Ripple's saying, yeah, so think about that, SEC. If the judge rules that we're a security, yeah, we're pushing for a jury trial because we know what went on here. We've seen inside the emails. Now, the SEC may be saying, well, that's all well and fine because that's on William Hinman and not the SEC. You know, we'll throw him to the wolves. Maybe that's how the SEC rolls. They haven't been making very good decisions through this entire process. But that's what I'm taking away from it. So it really seems like that place of strength, that place of power, that declaration of war is you guys better get your ass to the settlement table and start talking to Brad Garlinghouse and the Ripple team, right? That's what it seems like to me, but we'll see. Now, there's another great clip here I want to bring us to. Again, the whole thing is really fantastic. Shout out to Jeremy here. Listen to him give his kind of, summation, speculate on where we are right now and what could come. Take a listen really quickly.
First, we can see from the pleadings that Ripple is very, very confident that it can win on the Section 5 violation issue, and specifically on the there is no contract here issue that it spent a lot of real estate talking about in its brief. And maybe it's confident for good reason, as the SEC honestly really struggled to deal with that issue in its reply brief. I was really honestly surprised by how much it struggled. Second, Ripple says there was something shameful in the emails it was finally able to get from the SEC, but the emails will really be relevant only to Ripple's fair notice defense, which Ripple is wanting to go to a jury trial. Now, will it go to a jury trial? I don't know at this time. Ripple cites a case which apparently says that the issue is a jury issue, but that goes against what I initially believed, so I'll withhold giving an opinion on that until we see how the SEC responds in a couple weeks. But either way, the summary judgment issue on whether XRP is a security or not will be decided first. Except, and this is a remote possibility for me, but it's possible that the judge, for some reason, looks at the issues in the Section 5 violation and decides that a jury trial is necessary to decide them. Now, this would be a disaster because it ruins the early 2023 timeline for resolution, but I honestly don't see it happening. I'm just covering my butt by bringing it up, to be honest. But speaking of butts, since this is crazy speculation time, what about a resolution of the case? Well, I'm not going to hold back here. All the cards are on the table at this point. All major issues have been decided by the judge. The emails have been handed over. The parties know exactly how strong each side's position is. If the SEC doesn't want those emails made public, between now and the end of the year is the time. Now, as I've mentioned before, Ripple would certainly love to move on from this case, and there's only one thing it requires. Let's hear it from Ripple's general counsel himself.
We've said publicly since day one that this case settles if the SEC makes clear that Ripple sales and distributions of XRP and XRP's trading in the secondary market does not constitute a security. If they're willing to acknowledge that, the case settles, and settles very, very quickly.
And there you have it. And so we can safely assume that the SEC has so far not agreed to settle with the stipulation that Ripple's future sales of XRP would not be considered sales of securities. And if you think about it, Ripple really has no wiggle room on this issue, so it's up to the SEC to really decide if the case settles or not. And in that light, the worse the litigation goes for the SEC, the better the chances are. And so you have to think that at this moment in time, if I was the SEC, I'd be thinking very hard about whether this is the hill I wanted to die on. Bad facts make bad law, and there are a couple big pitfalls in this case for the SEC, but it's decision time for them, and we'll probably know shortly. But back
now, the other thing he brings up here, and again, shout out to Jeremy Hogan for all of that, is that don't sleep on John Deaton and the 5,000, whatever it is now, plus XRP holders like ourselves. Now, that is a sleeper that's, he goes on to say, you know, John can play such an incredible role because of how that can inform the judge. So this is getting quite interesting, ladies and gentlemen. It really, really is. But that's what we've got right now, and you should watch that whole video. I've got this here, and I want to show this because this case constantly reminds me of moments like this we've seen in years past. This is a conference that we watched. I want to say it's like 2019 timeframe. And it was basically Brad Garlinghouse and the CEO of Swift at the time sitting on stage together, being asked directly, I remember watching it, if they would work together. Check it out.
So you've said before that you think there's a world where Ripple could take over Swift.
Well, I've also said I thought there was ways we could work with Swift.
Let's talk about that.
Now, very quickly, before the CEO Gottfried answers, I want you to listen to the very beginning sentence he says here, and he cuts himself off, 2019 timeframe, I believe it was. And then at the very end of this, too, and shout out to Cowboy Crypto for grabbing this clip the way he did. Take a listen.
Well, I'll start that comment just by saying, look, Swift is owned, I think Gottfried, by the way, has a very challenging job. Swift is owned by the banks. It isn't a traditionally kind of construct. You have a very strong chairman, and in-house Citi kind of is an important stakeholder in that. But at the end of the day, Ripple's trying to help financial institutions and banks be successful in the future. How do we enable Santander to compete more effectively with PayPal, with Amazon, Facebook? And it's not going to be in settlement times measured in days. It's not going to be measured, settlement costs measured in $15+. So I want to see our mission in life really has been, how do we help these financial institutions be successful? Those are the same financial institutions that own Swift. And so in many ways we've thought, hey, we could work together. That hasn't played out, and I think increasingly, we are seeing more and more banks adopt Ripple's technology, and we're seeing that play out. But I have a ton of respect for what Swift has built, just to be clear.
Gottfried, how do you feel about a partnership?
Listen how he
with
responds.
Ripple?
Well, first, we can negotiate it here.
Let's do that.
Maybe a couple. One is there's two types of competition. I think the one is between the bank-centric model, and then there's lots of people who are trying to build cross-border payments outside of the bank system, and that's an interesting one to watch. And there you could see a shift in paradigm.
I mean, just remarkable, that clip in that exchange there where he talks about maybe in a couple of, and he cuts himself off and then goes on, and maybe, you know, you can see a paradigm shift like in what Ripple and XRP and the Ledger are doing. You know, when I think about this case and the importance, I certainly believe that John Deaton got it right. This case was in fact a weapon. I really do believe that. And I believe the people that made it a weapon had inside knowledge and understood, at the very least, from where their chair was, possibly public chairs, that they had knowledge that allowed them to personally gain. I believe that is absolutely something that could have taken place. And I tell you, but that doesn't make the case any less important when it comes to defining Ripple and XRP, the asset, for the crypto space and not just for themselves. And that's what makes me think so important, because we know there's too many different moments where we've seen Brad Garlinghouse at central bank world meetings or at the IMF or sitting down and having a conference with Swift. It's just, there's too many things that just add up. And when I see the confidence around the rest of the world, and even at the World Trade Center, for these kinds of ads, or whether it's Canary Wharf over in UK, you know, when I see this, I start thinking to myself, there is another perspective of reality to this case, and it is legally defining this technology, because the world is going to use it.